Well, hello everybody, and welcome back for the attempted Sunday look at what's growing on here in the Bear's Den Gardens. So far the wind is still pretty vicious today, and I hope you can hear me okay over all of that. But the rain has at least stopped to allow me to make this video. So yeah, without much further ado, because I don't know how much time I got, let's start taking a look at things up here in the front. Then we'll move back over to the dandelion forest, the tomato forest. Take a look at how all that's doing. Probably end up downstairs in the dungeon, where I still haven't managed to warm things up much. So yes, let's get cracking. I know I mentioned in a previous video just how productive it looked like these Saskatoons were gonna be this year. And as we can see, looking at it now, there are so many berries starting to form where all of those flowers were. I didn't even think there were this many flowers on this bush this year. I am very excited, very much looking forward to racing the birds for a good harvest. Saskatoons, Saskatoon berries, June berries, service berries, they got a lot of names. Logan berries, I think these are the same as those. But they have such an interesting flavor, and it's something really positive I remember from my childhood. So I've always just very much enjoyed them. Saskatoon berry milkshakes, pies, jams. It's just a very versatile little berry. And as you can see, they are abundant on a happy bush. Punky, I was talking to the lady at the post office. We'll try and figure something out. And yeah, as you can see, let's get down to the bottom here. As you can see, I'm pulling the YouTuber thing today. There are lots of young Saskatoons that are starting up in the middle here. So it should make it nice and easy for me to do some digging and then hopefully add a few more along the front of the property line, because those of you who are paying attention to all the permaculture stuff, you know that I want to do like an edible fence line. And ideally for that we're talking tree, bush, tree, bush, tree, bush. So it's kind of like, what do they call them, the ramparts on an old castle wall. It's kind of going up and down, but every stop is some different sort of edible long-term crop. It's going to be interesting and it's going to take a long time, but both are exciting to me. So anyway, we'll pan down from here to the railroad ties that mark the driveway, where this year I'm finally testing this location for peppers. We've got the ahi, I can never pronounce this one, ahuchapan over here. And I was looking at this earlier, assessing the damage from the storm. And look at that! There's a secret pepper on there. So that's very exciting. Flower came off there, flower came off there. We've got little tiny peppers forming in them already. Now I was advised to put this in a tomato cage, but sorry dude, I don't have one. So I'm just gonna have to let it do its thing. Maybe I'll throw a stake in there later on, not one of those crazy spruce stakes, but something. Beside that, we've got the ahi calabaza, which isn't showing any signs of fruiting or flowering yet, but just down by the stem and the branches we can see the beginnings of those secondary offshoot branches. So I'm hoping this will do something for me in the time that it's got. So very hard to tell with this ridiculously short Manitoba season. Here we've got one of the hot Portugals, and this does already have little flower buds on it. So we'll see. It came from the nursery that way. I probably should have plucked them off, but there are half a dozen on there. And honestly, for $2, I'm prepared to walk away with that as a total harvest. I'd like to see a lot more, but if that's what I get, that's what I get, you know? Over here, we've got the habanero that I bought. And honestly, it's not looking fantastic or particularly habanero-like in its plant structure. The last few days of weather have just been a nightmare. Awful lot of water. This looks really dry considering how much rain we've gotten. So I guess I'll come in and give it a sprinkle anyway, but yeah, these leaves don't look happy. The plant itself doesn't look happy. I have not had a whole lot of luck with standard habaneros here, but I keep trying anyway because I'm stubborn, you know? Over here beside that, we've got the other hot Portugal, which definitely does not look like I'm getting much of anything out of it, but at the same time, we can see those offshoots are forming. So I just might. Which brings us to the 2016 Sand Dollar. Seems to be enjoying life in the sunshine. Got some decent new growth going on there. So So hopefully something good will come of that. I'm not really expecting much. It's a very old plant, very tired, but I'm hopeful, just not too expectant. Now the yellow scorpion has been interesting since it's been outside. It seems to be producing longer, skinnier leaves out here. And I mean, it does look like new growth. It's certainly not rapid new growth, vibrant or, you know, abundant, but it is growing. So I have no idea what's going to come of this thing. I have yet to get a pepper out of the yellow scorpions. This one will not be coming back inside at the end of the season. So I will be starting more seeds for that in my first batch of seeds for next year. I'd like to know what that punishment tastes like, but I am aware it's going to be punishing. Oh, the yellow. Now this is a delightful little pepper. I'm not afraid of it at all, which is good because we look in there, we see flower starts. We look in there, we see flower starts. We look on this fly-covered one. Get off you. Tons of flower starts. More flower starts. Oh yeah, the next couple of weeks. Oh. That looks like it's going to be a productive little tip of a branch. So yeah, the next couple of weeks I'm hoping we'll see some flowers actually opening up on there. Could be very, very exciting. Like to get some of those seeds sent back to Dave. The bush beefsteak in a bag. This has definitely grown since it was put in here. I'm very much enjoying its location up front. Something I'm going to have to consider for future years. As a bush beefsteak, I don't know if it needs the cage or not, but it's got it, because I got a funny feeling this is going to be heavy. Heavy with fruit. Maybe that's just hope. But the fabric planter seems to be holding up fairly well. I've got a few weeds forming in there, but that's what you get for using yard soil. All in all, pretty impressive. You can see the suckers coming off in there. I am going to just leave them on to go crazy. But I'll probably take off the ones below the first wire here to encourage it to go crazy up. So we'll see what comes of that. Which brings us to the battlefield that is the front garden. You can see the cabbages looking a little happier. They've had some time to settle in. I haven't gotten the kale in because it's basically been raining since I got, you know, these first cabbages in. But I'm kind of thinking, in order to add a little color here, I might go kale shard, kale shard, kale shard. Just kind of break up the green a little bit with some of the reds and the pinks. And in front of that we've got this little 3-pepper patch. Already needs to be weeded. The weeds are very stubborn around here, very persistent. But that matchbox looks like it needs a better label. Good thing I know what that is. Paper lantern and the red demon, they seem to be settling in okay. Like I said, I chose this location for these 3 particular peppers because this, I believe, was the best spot in all of last year's garden for pepper production. And I did space them out a little bit better than last year, so thumbs up and here's to hope, right? So I guess moving around, that brings us to the unkillable mint. That thing was filled up to the brim with water the other day. I had to dump it out, and it's still proving itself to be unkillable though, quite content. Here's the coffee plant I brought up. Those older leaves definitely brown and dying off, but that is a lot of glossy new growth just since it's been outside, so that's kind of super exciting. And then we have the Grecian urn of zucchini. And look at this. I don't know if that's going to hang on and actually fill out, fruiting up, fill up, whatever you want to call it, get ripe, grow big, but there appears to be a baby zucchini on that little zucchini plant. So that's cool. Wouldn't mind getting a few more of those, and we're only just getting started. Is it just me, or are zucchini muffins like the bomb, right? Really, really hoping to get more zucchini going. So here we are down in front of the John Deere box. We've got the ahi lemon drop that came out so late. Looks like there are a lot less aphids on this puppy. It's hiding in a shady spot because, well, that's just the best thing for it right now, I think. But I don't know if this puppy's going to make it or not. Looking up into the John Deere box, we've got some fully flooded cups. Don't worry about those, there's nothing growing in there. These other ones I came out last night, poked holes in the bottom of, and, you know, drained them a little bit. So we've got the 5th, and where'd the other one go? 6 cabbages that hadn't gotten planted yet, the Brussels sprouts that still need to be planted, but at least at least the soil's well soaked. Got the mouse melon here. It wasn't necessarily happy with the rain and found these leaves kind of floating in a soil puddle, so elevated it a little bit, put some drainage holes in the bottom. This basil already had holes because they're double cup, so I mean that's doing okay. I've got to get on top of this stuff before we get another one of those rainstorms, but you know, I've only got so much time, right? So one step at a time. I will eventually get all of this done. So bringing us around, that brings us to the hanger full of tomatoes, which through all of this wind and all of this rain is surprisingly still there. I'm kind of blown away by the fact that it wasn't kind of blown away. So we got lots of flower starts on here. I'm kind of excited to see how many of these actually turn into fruit, because look at that. There's one cluster, there's another cluster, there's another cluster, there's another cluster. This is a ridiculously productive variety of tomato. Tumbling Tom Red. So, yes, if we get some fruit from that, definitely be saving some seeds, I think. Just down from there, here's the evening porch where we've got the red currants. Now, some of you may recall I was showing you flowers on those. Look at the freaking berry production. It looks like black, I'll stop touching it. Almost looks like the way black peppercorn seeds form. Kind of like how Malabar berries form too, but definitely got quite a few forming up on here. We're very excited. If you're not familiar with what a red currant tastes like, it's another one that's really hard for me to explain. So I just kind of strongly recommend you go out and find yourself some red currants and give them a try, because so good. So while we're celebrating things that are putting on lots of fruit for us this year, this is one of the honeyberries. I think this is the polar jewel. You know, I still don't know for sure. I've got the tags at the base of them, but I haven't committed it to memory. But all of those flowers turned into, I'm gonna say half of them look like they are turning into fruit for us. We had a lot of bee activity, so that's exciting. Look at that cluster. That's more right there than we got off this plant all year last year. It's looking like it's gonna be a great year for these berry bushes. So exciting. So taking a moment to pause and look at the gooseberry. Doesn't look like even half of its little flowers got pollinated, but there are still quite a few little berries forming on here. And as I said before, I think we only got maybe 1 or 2 each for Shocks and I last year. So this is gonna be much better than that. And it looks like this branch here is already trying to do what I wanted to test for the propagation method. So I'm gonna put these into a planter with some soil, see if they root up as bushes of their own, and then maybe we can start filling up this space, because clearly it's a plant that's gonna survive in this cold and try and produce for us. So yeah, the more fruit the better, right? Isn't that kind of the point of permaculture and landscape? More food out of your yard with less effort is good, right? Thinking of in the yard. So with all that wind, we had a couple of branches that fell down the last couple of nights, and they missed their mark, but not by far. I've been piling up all the branches right here for that hula mound thing, and I have to say I really appreciate Mother Nature putting them that close to where I'm going to put them. So massive props to Mother Nature for that one. So much work to be done in that pile. And then so when we come up from the gooseberry past the fire pit, it brings us to Troll's garden, which I have to say is doing rather well. This Manitoba tomato, I swear it gets bigger every day. Sorry about my shadow, it's not necessarily helping there, but look at that, eh? And then this, not a super chili in the coffee can. Woohoo! There are so many little peppers on this thing. I am definitely saving seeds from whatever this is. I'm still leaning towards Kung Pao hybrid, but I don't know, they're starting to get a little bit bigger. It could be a cayenne. I planted so many seeds over the course of the winter, you know, and ultimately it could be anything, because you never know what's going to have been in the soil and finally decide to sprout when you give up and plant three mosquito. Anyway, yeah, so when you plant other things in there, you never know for sure what's going to grow unless you use brand new soil. It's kind of what I was trying to get to. I moved another tomato over here to Troll's garden. We've got one of the red pear varieties also in the bag. I'm trying to basically make this the fabric pouch garden, and everything that seems to be here and in those pouches seems to be pretty content. And for the most part, these coffee can plants are fairly content too. I mean, look at the size of that leaf. I do not have small hands, you know what I'm saying? And this is the Sugar Rush, I believe, Sugar Rush cream. Nice looking roots on that. I'll put it away from the sun. The Crimson Red does look like it's grown up a little bit since I cut those actual pepper pods off. So I guess it's time to come through here with a small pair of scissors. We'll get rid of these old leaves. Have a better idea of what's new growth on there. Look at this dark opal basil. Oh, at least I know you can see it over the wind. You can't necessarily hear me, but that is so lovely. I love it. I love it. And then panning up right from there, we've got the rosemary, which I wish you could smell. So aromatic. Even in all this wind, there's got enough aroma that it hits me before the wind gets rid of it. And of course, the sage. Let's take a look at what's in the ground over there, and now it's going to get real windy. Sorry guys and gals. So clearly I haven't mowed around the peppers yet, but as I said, in the front yard, it's basically been raining for the last like 3-4 days. Didn't need to be mowed as bad before it started raining, but look at that hot lemon. Seems to have survived all this weather fairly well. And the Sugar Rush Peach here is doing all right. The Sugar Rush Red. I'm definitely digging on these labels. I'm gonna have to hit the co-op, see if they've got any more, you know, old paint sticks they don't use for display anymore. Would like to do that to all the tomatoes too. It's so much nicer than the cups, isn't it? So these two at the end here were labeled super chilies, but in light of what's going on in the coffee can, I really have no idea what kind of chili to expect. However, this one here, we've got a little bit more of a bulb shape going on. So I'm hopeful that this might actually be a super chili. I would like to keep some of the genetics for those in my collection, if possible. If not, you know, well, there are plenty of seed houses online, aren't there? We've got the Ahi Guyana over here beside that. And then we're looking at some of the sand dollars. This one's not doing particularly well. This one's struggling a little bit. It's probably the second nicest sand dollar example there. And that one here, the one behind me in the first row, that shishito's not looking great either. I'm thinking maybe this is not a way to plant shishitos because both of those peppers were having issues. But here is my prime sand dollar. Very nice looking plant. The leaves are a little curled up. I think that's because of all the rain that's going on, but nice size to those. Definitely catching lots of sunlight to make their plant sugars and all that jazz. It's the soil-bound Sugar Rush cream. If I had been thinking, I would have gotten those 3 Sugar Rushes together, but no. It's the smaller of the red demons. Well, the smallest, because I got like 3 or 4 of those growing around. Looks like it's going to survive. I don't know if it's going to have a chance to actually make it to production. The larger red demon back here, though, looking at it closely, we can see those offshoots starting. Basically where suckers would be on a tomato plant, right? So I'm expecting this to kind of bush out, hoping it will produce for me. And then we've got the ground-bound cayenne red back here, which ultimately I'm not expecting much from at all. But we'll see. We'll see. And that takes us to, I guess, the bag of squash. So assuming I'm remembering this correctly, here is the pumpkin. I don't know. I just don't know. We've got the spaghetti squash here. This looks a little happier than the pumpkin. We've got some flower starts in there. So that is good. Spaghetti squash is fabulous. If you haven't tried it, it's super easy. You just cut it down the middle, butter it, put some salt and pepper on there, cook it in the oven until you can like stab a fork right through the skin. And then you use that fork and you shred up the flesh inside the spaghetti squash and basically eat it like a vegetarian or a gluten-free spaghetti. And it is amazing. These acorn squash, this one, actually, the new growth on there doesn't look bad, does it? The new growth on the end of the other one doesn't look too bad either. We might get a few of those. Oh, that would be nice. So beside that, we've got the bunker. Okay, in this jar are all the peas that I meant to plant. I soaked them, I brought them out, and forgot about them because I got distracted, so they're way beyond growing at this point, I think. The 3 tomatoes that we put in, our initial testing tomatoes. We've got lots of suckers forming on this one. It's clearly growing, happy, healthy. We've got a lot of suckers forming on this one too. I am going to let these just grow as completely bushy as they want. That's why I gave them so much space here in the bunker garden. And I am so thrilled to see that they're actually taking up and growing for me. So very exciting. You know what's not growing is any of these 3 garden patches. It's just all weeds in there. I got nothing out of these rows when I planted those peas. Then I planted the soaked corn, which may have been soaked slightly too long, I don't know. And then we got all that rain coming down, so you can see corn seeds exposed and pea seeds exposed, and I just don't think I'm meant to get anything out of this patch this year. So perhaps I'll dig this one up to fill in the various places that I need, or perhaps I'll try again and plant beans in here. I just don't know. The so-called carrot bed, I've got nothing coming up in here that looks even remotely carrot-like. Oh, that wind. Sorry about the wind, everybody. And then up here in the radish bed, yeah. This is just dandelions and thistles. This is embarrassing, but, you know, I keep it real, so I'm putting it on here. So now, in the dandelion forest, that's supposed to be a tomato forest, most of my stakes are still intact. We do have this one at the indigo rose that the weather was too much for, but it's kind of a fat stake, and it was only like a couple inches in the ground. That was not good planning. You see this lemon boy here, looks very content. Look how purple that indigo rose is becoming. I think it's getting plenty of sunlight here. I was a little concerned because this patch is still behind all of these spruce for the morning sunlight, but look how purple those are getting. Like, that is a direct result of the amount of sunlight that the plant gets. So this far back is working at least. These couple of bush beefsteaks I'm a little concerned with. They didn't look that good when I put them in. They don't look that great now, so I can't be too surprised. But, you know, we got another bush beefsteak here. This one's looking good. Ultimately, I'd say the bag of bush beefsteak is the nicest one by far. Got the Sweet Juliet hybrid here. This tomato came to us in a batch of tomatoes from, I think it was the Canadian Tire in Penticton. We picked them up for like 10 cents each. And then we didn't save seeds from this one, but it turned out to be our favorite. I turned over the compost, grew some stuff in it next year. Wouldn't you know it, tons of these things sprouted up. So these are good and productive tomatoes. A very nice paste type tomato, little clusters of 6 and 8 fruit. So very productive. And then here we have the black, I never can pronounce this one, vernissage tomato. It's got some solid new growth on the top of that there. Not an abundance of growth, but let's face it, with all the rain and the clouds and everything, the last few days have been as cold as they have been, you know, wet and miserable. So now that things are warming up and the sun is out again, I suspect we're going to get some incredible growth. Tomato seems fairly happy down there. I definitely got to come through here with the lawnmower. Then the plants will be a little bit more obvious. The Bell Star plum tomato. See, that one's doing all right. Wouldn't mind getting it a little more towards the stake there, but I don't know if it's a climber or a bush tomato or what. So, yeah, red pear. These seem to be doing all right. Nice growth on the tops of that one there. What do we have here? I think we have the grape tomato. It's hard to tell because the ink itself is faded, but I'm kind of reading the indents in the styrofoam, and I think that says grape, so that'll be another one. All in all, you know, for the strangeness of the planting, there's another grape tomato right there. They seem to be doing surprisingly well. I honestly expected, there's yet another grape tomato, an awful lot of die-off from this because it's just going straight into the ground, but I guess maybe the blood meal is helping, and then there's that iron earth that I put in there. Because even though I don't think I showed it when I was planting all of these tomatoes, I did actually make sure a scoop of iron earth went into each one of these, and a scoop of blood meal went into each one of these. Look at that, sweet 100s. That is going to be a nice big tomato plant. I think this might be another Sweet 100 here. What's the label say? No, this is the Broad Ripple Yellow Currant. These things are so productive. And this year it's got room, so grow, baby, grow. As you can see, we still haven't put that 6-pack of Sweet Aromas in. But it is on the to-do list. We were ripping down the grasses around the potato bunker. So, yeah, all things in time. This tomato here, what do we got? Got dead leaf covering it up. It's a celebrity hybrid. Looks like it's prepared to grow fairly well. So that means this is another celebrity hybrid beside it. Also doing fairly well. And, you know, we can see basically the pattern continues. So I don't think we need to go over each and every single one of these plants. One thing I am curious about from maybe you Canadian homesteader types, we were told that this is a Nang cherry, or a Nanking cherry, something like that. Basically a bush cherry. And so we planted it here in the yard, and it seems to have taken fairly well, but I don't know what to expect. And is that even an edible type cherry? Because I mean, here we can see some little tiny berries forming. So if it is, great, I'm going to leave it, but if it isn't, what a waste of time. Looks like it's a very pretty little pinkish white flower. It's going to open on that. We'll have to watch that over the coming weeks. See how that looks. I mean, it is starting to look a little bit more like an edible variety, but at the same time, if we're talking about choke cherries here, I just don't want to waste the garden space for those. Those are so much seed and so little fruit. Why bother? You know what is exciting? Rhubarb. Rhubarb's always exciting. This thing's getting bigger every year. So I figure in the next few years, should be able to like not see the log barrier around it. At which point in time, yeah buddy, we're talking about good rhubarb harvests there. And I guess that leaves us with the cherry tree. And on this cherry tree, we have the beginning of a couple of cherries. There's this one here, nice and low. And then I saw another one earlier. So Shocks and I should be getting at least a cherry each, depending on how this works out. Oh, yeah, here we go. A little bit further up the tree, we can see it there. And it's just the start. So, I mean, there might even be a cherry for Fuzzy on this thing this year. But I'm really excited for potentially what that means for next year's harvest, because I wasn't even expecting any fruit this year. So, huzzah! So I guess this gives us a chance to get out of the wind. We'll go check what's growing on down in the dungeon. And that will be a wrap for the day. So, stick around, I'll be right back. So, as I was saying, that brings us back down here into the dungeon, where we're going to start with the Aquaponics because it's the, well, closest to a standard light spectrum, and I want to show you what's happened with this ahi pennick. So the first flower has come and gone, but if we look carefully in the background there, we can see the second flower has opened, and just in front of it here, where the first flower was, come on little camera, focus for daddy, come on, focus. Anyway, we can see sticking out of where that flower was the first official pepper bum on the ahi aquaponic, or the aquaponic ahi. I guess that makes more sense, the aquaponic ahi. But I've definitely got some trimming to do. There's no need for this thing way out here, and this thing here is kind of blocking light from other plants. And oh, there's a couple of flowers on that. Maybe I don't want to trim that end off, but it's getting a little unruly. But I'm so pleased to share that I actually have a pepper forming on this thing. Very excited to give it a try. So yeah, otherwise with the aquaponics, things are trucking along as could be expected. I still haven't checked on the deficiency yet, so that's just, I don't know, is it fine? Is it dying? It is what it is. This basil here did not necessarily seem to survive its transplant. Not at all looking happy, although the new growth in the middle died off. The basil beside it here, this one seems pretty content. It's got some issues. I need to come around and spray everything off. We've got dirt from previous roots being pulled up and stuff there. The one tomato there, that is growing over there and is growing up there. I don't know what to expect from that, but I'm, as I said before, I am hoping for a tomato or two. That would be nice. The mint got cut back again yesterday for that mead, and I have to say, it took on the flavor of the mint within a couple of hours, and so far has been delicious. I didn't wake up with a hangover or anything. We drank about a full wine bottle's worth of that stuff last night. And yeah, like I say, I didn't wake up with a hangover. I did, however, miss the entire morning from a good late sleep. So, yeah. Feel great today, though. Isn't that what matters? Alright, everybody, prepare your eyes, because that brings us to the table under the Mars Hydro, where next year's peppers are already beginning to grow. But not very fast, because I still haven't upped the heat down here. The yellow ghost is still so tiny, eh? Now, I had flipped on the flowering light, the bloom light I should say, because I was trying to resurrect this Aquaponics and have it, you know, actually produce these peppers. But as you can see, this sucker is fully dead, so change that back to the purpley blue, and maybe that will help things grow. Looks like we lost this bootleg clamshell. It's tragic, 'cause I think that's the only one of those that I had over here. The billy goat. Now, this was supposed to go outside, and it was outside for a couple days, but I brought it back in because it's just so tiny. And frankly, I wanted to fill up the space a little bit here with things other than mint. Now, a lot of these mint will not be here next time we check out the garden. 1, 2, 3. I see 4 of these in double party cups, and there's a 5th one outside. I'm going to plant them all where I had the grapes and the strawberries, because at this point it is clear nothing is still alive in that planter, and the theory is that mint is unkillable. So we're going to put it out there in a container, see if it comes back next spring, and if so, great, I've got an ever-blooming container of mint, and if not, we've proven that you can in fact kill a mint. So, yes, stick around for the science. Yeah, that's it. You can see the oregano back here. This is going to be good and ready for a haircut when the time comes to harvest Troll's garden to make that tomato sauce, so that is fantastic. It's really nice to see just how well this is bushing out in these last couple of weeks. This is an old plant. It's struggled. It's been around for a long time. It was placed in here from just a little tiny cutting that was barely alive. Let's see if we can even get to the main base of the root here. And all of that you see is kind of all coming off of that one sprig. Oregano is another great one. It's kind of a stage 2 for beginning gardeners. Mint is by far easier to grow and harder to kill, but if you can master your mint, move into your oreganos and some of your other kitchen herbs, and not only will you have better taste of your food for dinner, you get that little bit more confidence, because here's another type of plant that is surprisingly sturdy and surprisingly productive. So yeah, I recommend that for stage 2 gardening. But what else we got going on down here? We have one of the little sages that I brought back in. This is going to end up transplanted into the aquaponic garden. We got one little tiny parsley. It's just kind of a novelty plant at this point. The overly stressed Aquaponics. Do you see all of the flower buds that are trying to form on this itty bitty plant? This is what, in a 4-inch planter, 3-inch planter? Not very big. It's still say on the label here. It's a 4-inch round. So yeah. Hey, does that mean this counts as a bonsai pepper plant? In which case, would that make it a bonchi? And in which case, should I be carving this up? Trying to make it look all fancy and doing wire stuff to it, and I'll have to watch Karate Kid and see what Mr. Miyagi says. What is it? Remove everything that's not part of the plant, right? The plant that you see in your mind, something like that. I haven't seen that movie for years. Daniel San. Oh, these leeks. These poor leeks. One day, I'll get around to transplanting them, or they'll all die off. One of the two. Alright. Down here on what used to be the houseplant hospital shelf, we've just got that one LED, but as you can see, the mint has adjusted and decided it likes it just fine. And strangely enough, I'm watering this thing from the dehumidifier, which is filling up within about 6 to 7 hours. Does warm up the place a little bit though when the dehumidifier is going, so I'm going to fire that up after I'm done shooting today's clips. But I was kind of worried, because it was a used dehumidifier and there's all kinds of stuff in the air, that watering with that would be detrimental to the plants. So I'm only doing it to house plants, like the Dieffenbachia. This mint at this point counts as a house plant. This coffee up here counts as a house plant, and as you can see, it is not objecting at all to being watered from the dehumidifier. So I'm going to turn that around though, so it fills out a little bit more. As you can see, the back half of it there, not filling out the same at all. I did wipe these leaves off a little while ago, but it's very dusty down here, so they just seem to fill right up. There's lemon. I don't know if these are aged leaves and that's why they look so bad, or if it's a deficiency. The new growth seems fairly consistently green, so I'm thinking maybe it's just age, and I'll cut that off. A couple of you have mentioned that you have lemon trees, so feedback there would be great if you're still watching. And on that note, this has probably been an incredibly long video, so I guess we'll wrap it up today with a look at my little aphid disposal crew. Got the pellets right now, but I am just blown away by how happy and healthy these fish appear to be. I mean, one can only judge fish happiness by eating habits and things like that. But I see no signs of disease or discomfort or anything. This is a very sizable basin that they're in. So, yeah. All in all, this Euro garden seems to have worked just fine to convert to an aquaponic garden. I probably should replace that pump with my 400 because I think it's a little sturdier, but yeah. Alright everybody, this is where I'm going to wrap it up for the day. If you're still around at this, what, I don't know, probably half-hour plus mark. My camera doesn't tell me these kind of things. Thank you so much for sticking around. And as you know, there will be no video tomorrow, but we will be back on Tuesday. Alright, take care everybody.